you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Folks, Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you, does judge you as harshly as the rest of your family, because we are the positive folks. And, you know, sometimes you have those families where there's kind of negativeness or something, or maybe they're just looking with that side eye going, Bob or Jane, she's always improving herself. Listen to that there, Chris Voss Show. Don't know why I'm doing Norm Macdonald, a Canadian accent, but I love the guy. I miss him. Anyway, guys, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss one on the TikTokity, and Facebook.com/Chris Voss. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his book, Are Women Still the Fair Sex? Competitive Dating in the Digital Age. Out February 15th, 2025. J.G. Larough joins us on the show. We're going to be talking about his book, his insights, and some of the experience he's had, and why he's curious about are women still the fair sex, or whatever he is putting forth in his book and research. Welcome to the show, J.G. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
LaroughWrites.com. That's LaroughWrites.com. LaroughWrites.com.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your book?
That's a kind of a field manual for men who are coming out of a relationship or a long-term. They've been married, they're coming back out and into the wild, and it's a whole different playground out there now.
Oh, it is. I mean, there's a lot of friends that I've had and people I've counseled that they get out of a marriage and they kind of have this, they were married for 20 years to someone from what I like to call the old world. You know, when, I don't know about you, but, you know, I graduated high school in 1986. Women were a lot different back then. And I'll tell them, I'll be like, yeah, they don't make those models anymore. And so they kind of have this panacea sort of mindset that, like, oh, I'll just find a woman and yeah, she'll be a great cook and a nurturer and everything else. And they get out in the dating scene and, you know, then they're out a few $1 million and a couple divorces and messy stuff. And it's insane. That's what's going on. In your book, you mentioned that it's a competitive dating in the digital age environment. I thought I kind of got a laugh of that, a giggle off of it. What is competitive dating? And is that the sort of environment we're living in right now? Do I need a sword and a shield for combat?
I'd say more. You just need to be your best self. You got to really present, your best side.
I'll wear 2 condoms too, just to be safe.
Absolutely. Yeah. You
need a lot of armor these days.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah. You just want to make sure you've kind of dotted all your I's and crossed your T's, your best shape, you're taking care of yourself better than you were probably even before when you were with somebody. You want to work out, eat well, kind of get your own life together, get your social sphere going, and just kind of be your best self before you get back out there, because if you're not, the chads will get you.
The chats will get you. They'll just hoard all the chicks. But yeah, I mean, we're expected to do a lot as men. Women still look to us in spite of feminism and everything else, that we got to be the provider and the protector. I hear that from women all the time. Full disclosure, I've got a giant 5,000 group of men and women in Utah who date, and we try and hold events where we get them out from behind the apps and meeting in person. And out of 5,000 people, I could maybe get 175 or 100 people to show up, because the men are really interested. It seems like a lot of women, I mean, they've got, DMs full of simps and constantly being thrown interest at them. And so, well, we can talk about whether that's working for them or not. It's clearly not, because they're still single, but sometimes, just getting the attention and validation is what they're after. And there's a lot of that in dating right now, where the intentions are not the best in using men and their time. And I imagine some women could say maybe the intentions of men are good on their side, but let's get into it. So you talk about in your book, dating apps. What's your experience, and what do you see in dating apps that's an issue?
Dating apps are basically built to keep you on them. So a lot of times there's a lot of fake AI generated women on there. Most of the time, a lot of the women are after the top percent of men, so the Chad, so to speak. And when it comes down to just the regular guys, they're not getting treated as well. These women put out these thirst traps, and they want validation, just like you said.
Yeah. And men are looking to either date or have a sexual interest and stuff like that. But, I mean, there's a plethora of what women can be doing. Sometimes they're so damaged they don't want to meet, but they just want to have guys adore them and throw them. And then we have this simp function, where we have all these simps and betas that they don't want, but they will collect and herd just for their own validation and attention, and make them feel good on whatever hour, days they're not feeling well. We've seen people on social media. We've seen women teach men or teach other women how to scam men. If you can Google that, actually, on what is it, Tinder or TikTok. Scam men, they'll demand, hey, you got to pay for my babysitter, my time, you got to pay for my Uber, you got to pay for dinner itself, and all this sort of stuff. And there's a lot of communities that are running, you got to give her a Cash App if you want to go out with her, or whatever. There's one woman who said she ate free as, I think, a student for 2 or 3 years when she went to college. And she did it just so she didn't have to pay for meals and could get fed. And she dated with no intention of ever really doing anything. There's a lot of wild stuff going on in dating.
Yeah, she might as well have been an OnlyFans girl. I mean, seeking out validation and getting paid for it, I guess.
Yeah. And this is very different than I've ever seen before. I think we talked before the show. I signed up for Tinder, a year or two ago, maybe 3. And boy, all I got for a year was about 70% of those Asian fake bots that you see on Facebook, and they're always friending and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm told that women get some of that too. They get and they're scammers. They're trying to steal from women's money, and there's ours. But I think, what was it? Was it Ashley Madison, or several years ago, or 10 years ago? It was a couple dating apps that were basically found out to be making bots, knowingly using bots and making fake accounts, and using those fake accounts to reach out and, get men to sign back up and spend more money. And they got busted for it.
Yeah, you stay on there. That's their business model. They don't get paid if you leave.
There you go. And your title, "Are Women Still the Fairest Sex?" What does that imply? What's your thesis behind that? And are they, I guess? Do you come to determination in the book?
That's kind of tongue in cheek. Yeah, I think we do see that when you get out there, men pretty quickly feel like they're getting beat down, and like, where are the great women? I think men still kind of think of themselves as that white knight, and women are still the fair sex. And you get out there, and it's not quite what you're expecting. That said, there are really great women out there, and I know not all women are, have issues or red flags, but you got to get through a lot of rough ones first.
There you go. There are good women out there, and you know where they're at? They're married in relationships because they're healthy.
Yeah, they're probably not on the apps as much. Right?
They're probably not on the apps, and it seems, from what I see in my dating groups, A lot of women aren't on the apps that I see in my dating groups. They're trying to find other resources to go around. The problem is still, what their attitudes towards men. There's a lot of, when I talk to and give counsel to women, there's a lot of men hate buildup that they've built up in their minds. And of course, women's nature doesn't take self accountability. That seems to be their kryptonite, which is interesting because they really like to try and be men, but that's the cornerstone of being a man. We not only have to be self-accountable, we haze each other and make sure other people are. And it's kind of interesting how the approach to that whole thing goes. I don't know if your thoughts are on that.
Absolutely. And they'd have to hold each other accountable, because if you're going to war, you got to have a guy.
Yeah, you got to have your guy
next to you.
Yeah. You don't want a guy running off when you're trying to take the hill, right?
Absolutely.
And we're designed that way as men to pair up, to work together to achieve things. I was reminded recently of there's a Survivor, the reality show, did a thing where they pitted men and women against each other, and they put them on two different islands or areas of the island, and they had to figure out how to survive from ground zero with nothing. They didn't. I don't think they even clothes. Maybe there's a naked one, the Naked Survivor winner. But literally within the first day, men had bound together. They fire, food, killing stuff to make food, building huts, doing all the things. And literally, the women's group was like just huddling, freezing to death. They couldn't even get fire going, and they were starving, and they were just lost. And of course, they don't get along with each other very well, and so that wasn't going on teamwork either. That men have a natural chumminess to that, but it really showed kind of the difference. Now, we're both built differently as men and women. We are not equal. That seems to be a big giant lie that's fed to everyone, and we're designed to be complements to each other. So, I mean, one of us is supposed to design to help the other, and vice versa. But it doesn't seem like anybody's helping these days. I don't know.
I agree that men provide structure, and that's probably the first thing they did was let's put together a structure here. Mm-hmm. Let's create a method that we're all going to work together, and let's move forward that way. Well,
now, you talk about in your book a term I'm very familiar with, and I've seen probably on videos, probably in the millions with billions or trillions of views on TikTok and social media. It's a term called hot girl summer. Tell us what that is in your words and what that means.
Hot girl summer is basically they got out of a relationship and they feel like they've been stifled by the man that they were with, and let's get out there and just be with as many men as we can, and that's seen as almost feminism, and that's their power.
Yeah. And I've seen the videos of these young women. They're usually in their 20s, and they're, I've seen women all through 20s to 50s talking about, I'm in my hoe phase. And I'm just like, man, that was something I would never hear 30 years ago when I leave.
No, definitely not.
That was people bragging about hoe phase. It seems like shame is completely gone, which was one of the things that was a constraint to not end up in the situation we were in. For eons of time, communities, families, and people knew that, we need to help people make emotional decisions, because they're not good decisions when you make them emotionally. You talk to any gambler, talk to any investor, and when you see the fallout of the single mother epidemic we have in this country, and the broken children, and I've dated all my life. I've been in a million single mother homes. I've seen the fallout. I've seen all of it. I've seen what happens with the children, where they go. I mean, it's just insane. And no one wants to talk about it. And so it's good that someone's finally raising these hours, because, even attorneys will tell you this is generational trauma that's being generated from divorce and children's raised without fathers in the home, fathers alienated. I've used to own a modeling agency. I had friends that owned strip clubs, and they're like, thank God for bad parenting, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have anybody here. It's really interesting what's going on, but this hot girl summer thing is just extraordinary to watch. You see girls on OnlyFans. There's a report today that there was a gal who tried doing that 1,000 mark thing where she had 1,000 guys sleep with her in one day, and she had to be hospitalized. 560 men in the hospital.
Well, and then a year from now, she wants to have a boyfriend and a great life, and he's
settle down,
the 3 6s.
Yeah, she'll probably go into, religion seems to be where a lot of them go. I found religion now, and you're like, you did used to be a porn star, and I'm like, yeah, but I've repented. Well, that's kind of interesting. But so do you get into you mentioned the book is about blaming women. It's about empowering men. Tell us how that works.
Right. We've got expectations these days where men are getting raised by mostly women, like you said, with these single parent households, and they teach them how they want a man to be. And then, the woman comes along and she's not attracted to that man. He's been told, be vulnerable, don't be masculine, but that's not what women are attracted to.
Yeah. And the vulnerability thing, that's a shit test. If anybody doesn't understand what that is a shit test. What she's trying to do is separate the weak from the masculine. And so she's biting to see if you're dumb enough to show her emotion to you. And of course, she's going to use it for extortion too, because she sees that you're weak. And so she's going to, if she decides she wants to stay with you, she's going to manipulate you. It's amazing how much I have to explain that to men, which I shouldn't have to do. But then also, they're not keen on why they're doing it either, too. It's interesting with women's nature, a lot of their nature, they're not even aware of that they're operating under. And so that's why it's more important as a man to be educated. And a lot of books like yours and others that are out there in the field, it's interesting. I mean, there is some toxic nature to the manosphere, but a lot of these guys have either, they've had challenges. They're very unhappy about the experiences they've had. But a lot of what the manosphere is doing right now is educating men on women's nature and men's nature from biology. And this lie that we've been told that somehow it's changed since 1960, and it hasn't. Women are still operating off of duality now, where they want the old world, they want the new world, but they want men just to stay in the old world. So they want the flowers, the doors open, the chivalry. They want the masculine, provide and protect, and I give you my paycheck or whatever. But then they want the new thing where they want, I do whatever I want, however I want. You can't tell me what to do. If I want to go party with my girlfriends in Vegas, I can do that. And of course, that's usually where people cheat. I can talk to guys on social media, but you can't. There's this whole double standard and double thing that's going on. And men have to say no and start setting boundaries and stuff. Like I say, so we're just studying human nature is what we're doing. Meanwhile, you see on the other side, there's a lot of men bashing. There's a lot of screaming, yelling on social media. I'm really tired of opening my social media, and I excel in the 3 6s category that, you hear about in billions of videos and views on TikTok where, you're 0.001% man. And you're like, somehow they think that these people grow on trees and it's just a matter of time till they can find them. But yeah, you see the man hate, yelling at us that we got to pay them for dates. We got to pay them up front, cash apps. I've had women just hit me up to borrow money that I'm talking to. And you're just like, I haven't been on a date with you and you want to borrow $10,000 from me because you're broke?
Yeah, Venmo me.
What the fuck? And so, yeah, I mean, you've seen it all. And in the end, as men, we try and help women. Okay, you want independence? Okay, great. You want equality? Okay, we'll try and help with that. Okay, you want this? You want freedom? Blah, blah, blah. You don't credit cards, you don't loans. Yeah, go whatever makes you happy. The problem is that if you understand female nature, you can't make them happy. They don't even know what they want. And they'll easily admit that to me all day long. So don't gaslight me, folks, in the comments. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. And so really, in my feeling, men have to take the lead again. And when I talk and counsel with women, that's what they want too. They want a man who will be masculine, who will set boundaries, who will give them balance. Every one of my girlfriends has always called me their rock. They go, you are my rock. You keep me stabilized emotionally. You keep me safe. You make me feel secure. I know you got this. You are my rock. But not, I was raised in an alpha environment. So I have a whole different concept of it, of how I grew up. I had alpha men who taught me, raised me, guided me, set an example, and everything else. But a lot of these men, like you said, don't have it. You know, there's a line that I like in Fight Club called, where they talk about being raised by women, and they're like, we're a generation raised by women. I'm not sure another woman is the answer we need right now. And, you know, without masculine fathers in the home, you know, a lot of these fathers are feminized or betatized or emasculated, and the woman's masculine in the home. And so there's a real confusion there of who's what and what's who and how does this work. And women don't like to be masculine. I mean, it's draining to them. I mean, sometimes they like it, but usually when I get them privately and talk to them about it, they'll break down, cry, and talk about how they wish they could just be feminine and a man would take over and do things. And it's really interesting what you see. I mean, these are women that are going, I'm the boss, babe. I'm an independent, whatever. You get them together and start talking. Sometimes I have to explain to them how to be feminine, what feminine means anymore. They've just been so far gone.
Yeah, I'm with you. I give you kudos for your group of men who you're counseling, because you know that's what they need is a strong leader, somebody who can teach them how to be that guy who doesn't let her emotions. You know, her emotions are going to go up and down. You have to be the lighthouse in the storm. You know, you can't let a more feminized man's going to let every whim that she has and that goes up and down, it's going to bother him, and he's going to back up and back away and get manipulated.
Yeah. I mean, back when I was young, graduating high school and having my first relationships with women and dates, they would be reading all these magazines that you see on the shelf. How to get men to do what you want, how to manipulate a man, how to give him great sex, but a lot of it was how to get whatever you want out of a man by emotional manipulation. And they learn this from their fathers early on. It's part of their survival tools that they're given. But they all used to be raised with fathers who would set usually a good example of what a masculine man would do and give her a blueprint for what to look for. Men, on the other hand, you know, women have these whole manuals that have been written about us. They start reading when they're in their teens. Men just get Playboy. Like a comedian used to tell that joke. He's like, all we get is a nude picture of a woman and go get her. We're just like, the woman. You know, meanwhile, women are running the highest game order of psychological manipulation of men. And it kind of used to work back when we all played our roles. But once you start mixing it, trying to flip biology and stuff, it doesn't work. It's kind of a sick experiment that's coming to an end here. You talk about why being nice isn't enough and how to balance confidence and emotional strength. Talk to us about what that means.
If you're just the nice guy who puts up with anything, you're like, I would put it this way: if you're going out with a woman and you want something for her, you don't see her as being someone you want to be in a relationship with. You're attracted to her. Is it better to just say, you know, I don't really see anything. I'm attracted to you. You know, I'd like to spend some time with you, but I don't really see a long-term relationship with you, and just being straightforward? Or is it better to be the nice guy? Oh yeah, let's go out again. I'll take you out. Things are great. I really like you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the difference there is, you know, if you're too nice, you'll get rolled. I mean, you know, you hold your hand out, people will take everything out of you if you put your heart on your sleeve and your money on your sleeve, for that matter too. Women are harvesters. Men are hunters. Women are harvesters. They'll gather everything that you want to give them for free, because that's what they do. And they do that to protect themselves, give themselves resources, and protect their children. I mean, it's a biological nature thing that's going on here. But yeah, a lot of men have been raised without knowing the difference or knowing human nature. And I think that's been our thing. And so lately, what men have been doing is sitting down and comparing notes and being like, what's going on? And learning women's nature. And of course, trying to focus in on their own. And they're kind of confused because you have these men that were raised, like you said, you know, the girl was told, you can have everything. Don't settle and go do everything. And that's the insane part. They actually believe it. from their emotional interpretation and life and how they process things. And yet as men, we go, yeah, logically you can't have everything. That's not possible to have everything, especially all at once, maybe across 60 years, but no one can have everything. I mean,
yeah, they're taught to believe now that a man should make you happy. You don't have to be a full person and be happy on your own. And that's what a man should be looking for, is a woman who she's got her own thing going. She's got good friends, and she is happy on her own without you. And you're a compliment to her life, and she's a compliment to your life.
Yeah. And that's how we used to work together back in the day. But now it's like, you get this list of 50 million things that I have to be, do, and become and bring to the table, basically make the table. And when you ask women, you can see this on interviews online. This isn't an aberration. They ask them, what do you bring to the table? And they go, this, sex, this, this great body. And you're like, yeah, that's not
I can get that.
We need a little bit more. Yeah, you can get that anywhere now. And you can see that, the price of sex has been driven to zero with hookup culture. It's funny. I have so many women that are complaining to me about hookup culture and men who hit them up for sex, but you find them chasing chads. I've recently gotten a hold of where I'm having chads send me their DMs, and I'm seeing how women are behaving in them. They're telling me, they're going through 1 to 2 girls every night, different girl. Man, they don't have to do rotation, man. They have hundreds. And when you understand the data of what's going on dating apps, 95% of women on dating apps have their search mechanisms to only target and seek out the top 5% of men, really the top one when it comes down to it. But yeah, and they've got it mechanized so that, a lot of guys, that if you're shorter than 5'11", you're going to have the hardest time scoring on apps, because women have their search results at, I think it's 5'11" and higher.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. All the way up to 6'8" or something like that. And you're like, what is that? Like one guy on a NBA team or something?
And then we wonder why their perception of themselves are distorted.
Mm-hmm. And you've got a lot of that. Tell us about your experience. How did, what caused you to write this book? What was the proponent from it? What was your journey?
I got out of a marriage and started back dating, and I still would approach women at the grocery store in different places, and it was like, I felt like a stalker. So then I guess these apps are ubiquitous, so here I am, I got to use them. And then on there, it's just, it's crazy what you see.
How long were you married for?
I was together with her for about 13 years.
13 years? Yeah, that's a good time. You had kids and everything?
Yeah. I have a 13-year-old.
So did you go through the messy divorce? Are you able to see your kids? There's some women that are playing games where they go, they alienate the father, which of course creates more generational trauma with the children.
No, not in this case. We're still friends, and
that's good.
We have a great parenting relationship.
Did you share the book with her? I would just have to ask. It's good.
She
probably not.
It just came out. She hasn't gotten a hold of it yet.
There you go. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't. Don't send her a copy. That's the best advice. Logic and reason versus emotion doesn't work out well. Especially, you look at the emotional intelligence quotient. I grew up being told all my life that women have more emotional intelligence, and they are very aware of living in their emotion. They're not aware of living beyond it. And so they process everything from emotion. Men process from logic and reason, unless that man operates in his feminine. And if that man operates in his feminine because he's broken for any one of a number of things, he will still have that emotional reaction. But a lot of people don't realize emotional intelligence means you're basically stoic as a man with logic and reason. You can control your emotions, you control your reactions. You don't react with emotion. You react with logic and reason. And it's tough to find that on the womanhood side with the Try telling someone their butt looks fat and see what happens.
Yeah, stoicism is huge. I think it gets a bad rap sometimes. People think it's mechanical or robotic, but like you said, the ability to just stay even keel, have discipline, which gives you freedom by making yourself do difficult things and staying calm and having that ability to let the emotions that she has float over you and realize, what's she actually, is she trying to cut you, or is she just having a day and just needs support?
Or she's having 5 minutes. So, women go through a lot of emotions throughout the day. They're hormonally, they experience, they're just constantly up and down. I think if it was a female guest of mine on the show, guys, we pretty kind of have this steady keel, the things that kind of affect us is, I'll give you an example. Like last night, our website went down for 2 hours and it looked like it had been hacked. It appeared, we were missing all these files and it was a real mess. And it was weird. It was on a server with about 10 other websites and somehow those are all working, but this one wasn't. And so we thought we'd been attacked and hacked. Turns out it was just GoDaddy had some sort of back end bullshit that went on. They fixed it. And so within 3 hours, we were up again. But, I was having full panic mode.
Sure.
And I was breathing. I was doing everything I could to stay stoically calm. But inside, I was having a panic attack. But I was trying not to react. I was trying to work with the tech support and just be a cool customer through it. And I achieved that. But that was like an emotional thing. If my dog dies, I'm definitely going to go feminine and cry.
Sure.
But, those are examples of extreme pushes to me. But yeah, women look for that. They look for a man who's highly emotional, intelligent, who's a rock, but, then they'll shit test him to death with this. Tell me about your emotions and see what, and then eventually, he's emasculated and she leaves him because he's a weak man and she's broken him down. And women aren't usually even aware of what they do to emasculate a man. And so a lot of times, when you train them, when you talk to them, when you coach them, you've got to teach them about, hey, saying that's really fucking disrespectful. Like, did you think about that before you said it? No. And do you understand how that impacts a man when you say that to him? And so you almost have to rewire them on how to be respectful to a man, why respect is important to a man, why sex is a signal of respect to a man. And it's crazy to have to sit and talk to him and explain to him how to be female again. I see that all the time.
Yeah, that brings it back to, being in your masculine and masculinity being called toxic now. It's really not. It's just being that steady person. And, if you open up and be super vulnerable, like you said, you're going to get manipulated from then on. She won't be attracted to you. She might keep you around for your resources, but and while she's getting validation everywhere else. But
it's true. We see a lot of this, and men aren't trying to bash women. We're trying to understand them and help
absolutely
them.
Not.
We are their biological providers and protectors. We were designed. We have upper body strength. We have the ability to assess dangerous situations and react in them. We were designed to protect women. And somehow they've been sold a lie that we're not their protectors and they should protect each other. And if you're pretty familiar with how they get along with each other and how they really feel about each other, and they compete for us as men, it's really interesting the turn that's taken. And yet when you talk to them, they still won't, I guess, realize, I don't really hate Marge. I remember there was one girlfriend I had. She would always come home and she would complain about her bar girlfriends and how they were always trying to claw her back, because misery loves company. And boy, if you got one girl out of 5 that she has a healthy relationship with a man and everything's good, boy, that committee will just do everything they can to destroy that. And so she would come home all the time and she would bitch about her committee, her girlfriends. And finally, I just turned to her one day and I go, she's complaining about, I'll just use the term Marge for the thing. She's complaining about Marge. And, Marge is, and she was just talking about her in such a way that I just turned to her. I go, why don't you just fucking murder her? And she goes, what? And I go, I got to be honest with you. You guys talk about your friends like I talk about my enemies. I don't talk about my friends the way you talk about your friends. If you ever hear me talking about somebody that way, I want to murder them. And I'm a man, so killing is very convenient for me. It's built into my nature to protect you. And it was funny to just see her flip shit on it and go, oh no, I don't hate Marge that bad. Have you really listened to how you talk about Marge?
Do you think she has your best interest?
Because I don't talk about my friends that way. And so it's interesting, this competitive nature that they constantly have with each other. And really, it almost seems like they're just keeping tabs on where each other's at, doing what sabotage they can, and then leaving and trying to outdo them all the time. But yeah, the same thing at work that goes on. This goes on at work. I come home, Barb is working on me, and Barb is trying to sabotage me, and Jolene is with her, and you'll just be like, why don't you just fucking kill him? Or take him outside and punch their fucking head in. That's what we do as guys.
Yeah, why are you still going to lunch every day?
Yeah, it's just the world that they live in is a challenge because they don't have the overtness that we have, the power of will, the agency of will. Their nature is different from us. We're overt, they're covert. We're aggressive. They're not, technically they're not supposed to be aggressive. But when they're in their masculine, it's interesting how they try and be like us. And I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. When you got divorced, or when you did a retrospect of your marriage, where do you feel you failed, and how much have you applied in the book and trying to correct it?
I think a lot of it for me was just that pressure when you get to your mid 30s to get married, and I think we both were in that age time frame, and we kind of went along with the crowd, I guess, because all of our friends were married and having kids. And so we had a great relationship for a time, and then just realized we weren't fully compatible. So,
and was it 13 years in, or you realized that, or was that?
Yeah, it was probably a year. The last
year in?
The last year. Okay. We were I think we kind of figured that out, and then.
So was it pretty mutual then? You were like, yeah, I think we can probably figure out that we're probably not the best, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah. We were, I think we were both feeling it. Maybe it wasn't out loud. We'd done some counseling, and we just weren't compatible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which is a healthy way to do if you can separate and take care of the children. What are some other aspects we haven't discussed that we can tease out for people to pick up your book?
A lot of what I wrote about was just self-improvement, men being, more accountable for themselves. It's almost if we go to the grocery store and we stop eating all the garbage, if these stimps stop giving her all the validation, it'll go away. And things evolve over time. And I think, like you said, men are kind of looking around at each other and saying, what in the heck's going on here? I do jiu-jitsu, and there's a lot of different age guys, and you kind of realize it's happening in every age group of man. They're running into the same type of things.
Oh yeah. I'm even seeing the Chad chasing and all that up until the 60s, 65s. It's really insane. I've had women sit down with me at my events and start telling me sexually how much they enjoy younger men, and they're 65 and I'm 57, and I'm just looking at them going, this is like having a conversation about sex with my grandma, and this is not conducive to anything that would excite me at all. Yeah, I see a lot of the trying to date down like men, a lot of masculine activities, and yet sans the cornerstone of men, self-accountability. If you don't have that, you can't be a man. You can play masculine all you want. You can say you're boss babe, independent. You can have the most high-paying job in as a lawyer or doctor, wherever. And what's interesting is there seems to be some sort of self-accountability that takes place with another man's CEO at the work. But I can't get that in my home. And this seems to be something men struggle to get out of women. And when it comes to relationships, failures, and everything else, that seems to be a thing. But, it's wild. And men still do, I think, what they've always done. When they break out of a relationship, they kind of spend time, and there are men that hop around. But I think for most men, it's not that easy for us to just get right back on the horse. And usually we do a logical, reasonable, deconstructive relationship. What did I do wrong in here? Okay, I did this, and it kind of haunts us and stuff. And where women will usually just move, it's called monkey branching. They move from one relationship to another, and they never really take time to sit down and go, hey, maybe it was me, or what did I do wrong, or, and then when you date now, the one thing that came about recently over the last 5 years, I think it came out of Donald Trump because he was diagnosed as a narcissism. There seemed to be a lot of narcissism discussions about that. He's definitely probably the most textbook version of narcissism ever. But shortly after that, the dating scene, you would take people out to dinner and they would start telling you how every boyfriend or husband they had was a raging narcissist who controlled them. From the conversation, you're like, he kept you in a prison cell or something in his basement, or what was going on there?
Yeah.
And then after you hear the stories of the last 10 guys were narcissists, you're like, logically, we've had a lot of discussion on this in the show. There's only clinically about 3% of the American public that is diagnosable as narcissistic. We all have narcissistic tendencies being human beings, dark triad traits, things of that nature. And of course, there's been a rise in narcissism in women with social media. But you sit and you look at it and you go, honey, were you standing outside the narcissist rehab clinic? But then you date like 300 of them and it's the same answer. And you're just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, is this a reflection of themselves? And this is kind of.
There's a lot of that projection in female nature as well, but to offset any accountability. So as men, we're trying to figure this out. We love women, we care about them. We're designed to be their protectors. When we see them failing, like I see them now, right now we're kind of in this phase where it's the end of life of feminism. You're seeing this massive return to meritocracy. A lot of leftist women who believed in abortion, flipped over to vote for Donald Trump. You kind of saw this vote that was very masculine and on the Republican side, and they tapped all the men over there and the men podcast, the menosphere. And then a lot of women flipped over and voted because there's so much lack from all I talk to about women in my groups of masculine men. And they're like, where are all the masculine men? I'm like, you killed them. You said all that stuff where we don't need no men are trash, blah, blah, blah. You said all these crazy things. And so men listened and went, okay, you don't want to hang out with us anymore. By my numbers, 88% of men, not my numbers, by my numbers and data I've collected from other people, people have huge groups online that do polling. 88% of men are not dating. They're sitting on the fence. No, when I talk to Gen Zers, they're not interested at all because they're the ones who see that hot girl summer front and center. And they're not interested at all. I've got one friend of my family who he's 24. He's not interested in women. He's not interested in, I think he dated a single mother once and that made it worse. But he owns like a race car. He owns a giant ass new truck. He spends all his money doing what he wants and his hobbies. He takes his car out to racetracks and he's living his best life at 24 years old. And he's making bank and he's planning businesses and all this stuff. And yet so you're going to get a woman in your life? No. A lot of them are virgins in their early 20s. No,
it's the whole men going their own way. That MGTOW,
the MGTOW and stuff. But part of it is they're just grossed out. Their biological nature knows they can't wife up those hot girl summer women because they can't pair bond anymore. And So it's just really interesting, and we need more discussion about human nature. It seems like both women, men and women, need to understand the human nature, how we are, and human nature doesn't change. A lot of the stuff you study, especially in the Manosphere Red Pill, is about human nature, and it hasn't changed. All these lies we've been telling everybody since the 1960s is all lies. It's bullshit to try and flip biology, turn women into men and men into women. And largely it's kind of worked where people have adopted feminine nature and male nature. You know, you see our society is very feminine now. Everything's a victimhood. We've turned into this victimhood culture, competition culture, where you have people going, "Oh, well, you were victimized by who? I have a better story," you know.
Yeah,
it's always
it becomes an identity.
It becomes an identity. And usually I learned about this stuff with my girlfriend's committees. You know, they'd sit around and have their pity party of who was the worst hurt about whatever. I remember watching, you know, one thing that made me just delight finally went on for victimhood competition. It was Whoopi Goldberg on The View. And there was somebody who come on that had talked about the Jewish Holocaust and the persecution that Jews have taken over history and time, which has gone on for eons. And she kind of got in some trouble because she brought up about how, well, she basically said something to the effect of, yeah, I mean, you want to talk about who's really been a victimhood in history, and it's black people. And it was kind of like this one-upment moment that you looked and you're like, you know, I understand that Jews have been victimized and attacked and all that stuff for eons of time. I understand black people have had a horrible row at it. We haven't always treated people the best in nature. It's sadly one of the fallacies of human nature. But trying to do the one-upman thing, like your experience of being shivved with a knife is, and my experience of being shivved with a knife is worse than yours. You know, it was kind of weird to see that competitiveness to it. And you see that on social media. There's people constantly, instead of fixing their trauma, they're wearing it like a badge and turning it into a thing. And then, you know, I've seen it where sometimes they come on the show and they're like, hey, I have more trauma than anybody else. And they're not healed, yet they're out coaching people on it. And that's really interesting too.
And getting into relationships when you haven't worked on yourself enough to have all the emotional stability and to be able to be vulnerable yourself without that thing being the main thing of who you are.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think we're bashing women here either. There's a really wonderful women out there who have done a lot of work and been introspective, but I agree with you. On the apps, it's gotten rough out there, and there is a lot of that competitive. My trauma is worse than yours, and you got it. This is how I get to act like this because I've had this trauma, and you just have to take it.
And you have to bail it out. So they're looking at you, going, "You're a private protector. You got to fix all my problems," and you're just like, oh, "I didn't sign up for this. I spent time in the desert for 5 years after my relationship." And my head was fucked up. I couldn't get women to like me. And, you know, I had to work through all my issues or go to therapy. And, you know, a lot of people aren't going to therapy. They're just hopping from one relationship to another, dragging all their trauma, their childhood issues, and never fixing them. As we round up the show, we want people, of course, to go buy your book and stuff. We could probably talk about this for eons of hours for the data I have and you have collected and research. But yeah, we're not trying to bash anyone, but there are elements in our society of people that have bad behavior, and they need to fix that behavior, not only for themselves, but maybe for their children and everything else. And I include both men and women in that category. And there's a lot of...
Oh, go ahead.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I think your friend who's got the race car and doing his own thing, he's part of the rebalancing. You know, it's the scale. I think
the 88% of men that are not dating, it's part of rebalancing. Men are basically going on strike, and they're not doing it to hurt women. No. They're just tired of being run through the grinder, and being taken advantage of. You know, and you see all these abuses going on where women are openly saying, "Hey, I take guys and use them for dinners. Hey, I take guys. I want you to pay me." You know, you can see it all over social media. It's in billions of views. There was even a long time, I think they've taken it down, but there was a scam all men, how to scam men how to get men to give you all their money while you're dating them.
Playbook.
If you've studied the pay pig phenomenon and other things, it's just insane. And of course, part of my problem is with the men who are simps and weak and feminine, who they really contribute to a lot of this stuff. So they enable it. They give access, they give validation and all that's and attention to it and money. And they create this environment too, where they aid and abet this sort of behavior and support it. And then you're sitting there just going, you just made things worse, dude.
Yeah.
Whatever. You're just embracing that. And they don't understand because they can't get laid because they're feminine. So they're just like super ultra nice guys throwing themselves in front of the bus. And
they really don't even like women really. They get so frustrated, that.
Yeah. There's some in the MGTOW that turn to really hating women in the incel community where they really just make hating women a thing. And that's not the right answer either. Yeah. Understanding our human nature, our biology, why we do things. A lot of this stuff circles around survival of the species, breeding, having children, mating, finding the best mates. A lot of stuff that's designed in women and men's nature in these realms is designed to propagate the species, to make the species continue. So there you go. So as we go out, give us your final thoughts, give people a pitch out on the book, then tell them where they can buy it, .coms, all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. If you've been back out into the dating world and you're having all these things that we've been talking about happen, give it a read. There's a lot of tips in there. Even just the end of the book, I've got a lot of different resources, other books to go read and websites. Take a look at laroughwrites.com, LaRoughWrites.com, laroughwrites.com.
There you go. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and thanks for sticking your neck out there. You're probably getting a few arrows, as always. The pioneer's done. But the more we get men back up to par, get men understanding what's going on, and get going on. It's interesting. I hear women complain to me all the time. They're like, how do we get the men off the fence? How do we get more men dating and more men taking me out? And I'm like, everyone sees you at Chad's house. I have a big social graph. I see who everyone's dating. I see who they're hustling. I see who's in comments and all that stuff. I have my own of that. But, men aren't stupid and blind. We see what's going on. We're logical. And then one of the big things I hear from women is they won't settle. Somehow their mothers really ingrained them when they're young. And you're like, honey, everyone settles. No one finds their perfect person. Men are logical and we settle too. I mean, we'd love to all be dating Victoria's Secret models. And we grow up dreaming about it. We'd love to do that. But we realize that they represent probably about 1% of womanhood. And we can't all be there because the math doesn't work. But on the other side, they think the math will somehow turn out. They just have to wait long enough. And the longer they wait, and I give a counsel to a lot of women in their 50s that are crying, that are broken, that are, the day they've fallen off a cliff, they've monkey branched too far. And there's no men there because we start dying off in our 50s as men in double digits. We actually, throughout life, we're almost always at double digits die off because we do the hardest jobs and keep everything sustained in our global world. We do all the hard jobs, the dangerous ones, the dirty ones, and we die off because these, the high risk and the pressure of everything we do. And no one really gives a shit what our feelings are, right, in the world. No. We learn that very early on as men. And so we have to bottle that up and deal with that. And so a lot of the women, when they hit 50, it's almost like the second wall. 30 is the first wall. If you understand how women's values and men's values rise and fall over time. But yeah, I have all these women that are in 50 plus and they can't find a man and things aren't looking good for prospects after that, and men, they don't understand the why men date down and they date up. And I'll explain to them. I'll be like, when I was a sophomore in high school, you wouldn't date me because you would only want to date the seniors. Uh-huh. And all my life, you've always been dating 5 to 10 years above me. So I have to date down because that's my market. And of course, men's biological seeks youth and feminine because it has the highest value in fertility. It has the highest chance of having babies of high quality. And as you get older, as women get older, there's more chances for things. That's just a biological fact for issues in childbirth. And, we're designed as men to seek that. And so suddenly at 50, they can't find the older men they want. And they're like, can we date you guys and younger and side? We're like, no, we're dating these wonderful feminine women here. And a lot of them are in perimenopause and in menopause. So they're having troubles keeping stable just from that element alone. And that's a real challenge for women, sadly. I wish if I could find who put that curse on them, I would, but something I don't run the show. But yeah, it's interesting. But we need to come together again as men and women. We need to realize our nature, why we're built the way we are, embrace it, and come together again and go, you do the man part and I'll do the girl part.
Well said.
Yeah, there you go. Let's all learn to get along, as someone once said. Thank you very much for coming to the show. We really appreciate it, JG.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So JT Larough, rowrights.com.
All right, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry. I said JG, didn't I?
No worries.
Now, that's on Amazon, by the way, just so you know.
It is. Yep. JT Larough.
Okay. All right. So there you go. The book is entitled Are Women Still the Fairest Sex? Competitive Dating in the Digital Age, out February 15th, 2025. Let's all learn to get along better, people. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. Was I hearing your JT?